Stop everything you're doing right now. Seriously, stop. Because in the next few seconds, I'm going to reveal something that could completely change how you understand your own existence. And no, this isn't another empty internet promise. It's a scientific truth that most people go their entire lives without discovering. Have you ever felt that there's a better version of you somewhere? As if there's a parallel you living exactly the life you dream of, making the right decisions, being brave when you hesitate, thriving when you struggle? That strange feeling that your current life is just one of many possibilities, and somehow you chose the wrong one. Well, quantum physics has disturbing news for you. That feeling isn't imagination. It's perception. You're literally feeling the gravitational pull of other versions of yourself that exist at different frequencies. And the most impressive part? You're connected to them right now through a phenomenon Einstein called spooky action at a distance, quantum entanglement. Imagine for a moment that your life is like a radio station. You've spent years, maybe decades, tuned to the same frequency, the frequency of fear, scarcity, doubt. Meanwhile, on another station, broadcasting live at this exact moment, there's a version of you that has already overcome all of this. That already has the relationship you desire. That already built the dream business. That already healed from the wounds you still carry. And here's the secret no one tells you. The distance between you and that other version isn't measured in miles or years. It's measured in frequency, in identity, in who you believe yourself to be when no one is watching. But before we dive into this transformative journey, do something crucial now. If you felt something move inside you, that shiver, that feeling of, I always knew this, then subscribe to the channel and leave your like. Not for me, but for you. Because this small gesture is a quantum signal that you're ready to change frequency. In the quantum realm, every choice collapses a reality, and this could be the first domino of your transformation. Now prepare yourself. What I'm about to share isn't esoteric theory. It's the precise mechanics of how you can navigate between versions of yourself based on proven quantum principles. We're going to talk about how two entangled particles remain connected forever, no matter the distance. We'll explore why your attempts at change have failed until now. Spoiler, you were trying to change the symptoms, not the observer. And I'll show you exactly how to collapse a new reality through a new identity. Because the naked truth is this: you're not trapped in a reality. You're trapped in an identity, and every identity is a choice, even when it doesn't seem like it. The quantum field doesn't respond to your desires. It responds to your frequency. And your frequency isn't determined by what you want, but by who you believe yourself to be at the deepest level of your being. Do you feel that restlessness? That inner voice whispering that you were born for more? That inexplicable frustration with the life you're living, even when everything seems fine on the surface? That's not ingratitude. It's not excessive ambition. It's your future self, your parallel self, your highest version, pulling you through quantum entanglement, trying to show you there's another path. And the most fascinating thing is that this other path isn't in the future. It exists now, parallel to this moment, just waiting for you to change stations, adjust your frequency, collapse a new reality through a new identity. But how? How do you jump from one timeline to another? How do you disentangle from the version of you that's holding you back and re-entangle with the version that's waiting for you? That's exactly what we're about to unveil. Not through superficial positive thinking or empty visualizations, but through a deep understanding of how consciousness interacts with the field of infinite possibilities. We're going to decipher the code. We're going to hack the matrix of your own identity, and we're going to do it with the precision of a scientist and the grace of a mystic. Because in the end, the greatest discovery you can make isn't about the universe out there. It's about the observer in here. And when you change the observer, dear friend, you change everything. Absolutely everything. The secret science of who you really are. Let me tell you something that will fundamentally shift how you see yourself. You are not a single, isolated consciousness floating through space. You are a living network of possibilities, entangled with versions of yourself that you can't see but can absolutely feel. And this isn't metaphysical poetry. This is hard science that physicists have been documenting for decades, yet somehow never made it into your high school textbook. Quantum entanglement was first observed in laboratories when scientists discovered something that shouldn't be possible according to classical physics. They found that when two particles interact and then separate, they remain mysteriously connected. Change the spin of one particle and its partner instantly responds, even if they're on opposite sides of the universe. No signal travels between them. No time passes. The connection is immediate, absolute, and it violates everything we thought we knew about how reality works. Einstein hated this. He called it spooky action at a distance, and spent years trying to disprove it because it threatened the very foundation of physics as he understood it. But experiment after experiment confirmed the impossible. Particles, once connected, remain entangled forever. They share a quantum state that transcends space and time. They are, in the deepest sense, still one thing appearing as two. Now here's where it gets personal. You are made of particles. Every atom in your body, every electron spinning in your cells, every quantum of energy that comprises your being, they're all playing by these same rules. And if particles can be entangled across infinite distance, what makes you think your consciousness is any different? Think about this for a moment. Every decision you've ever made created a quantum split. Every time you chose left instead of right, stayed instead of leaving, spoke instead of remaining silent, you created a branching point in reality. Physics calls this the many worlds interpretation, and while scientists debate its implications, the mathematics is clear. Multiple versions of reality exist simultaneously, and they're all equally real from a quantum perspective. But here's what no one talks about. These versions of you aren't just theoretical constructs floating in some abstract mathematical space. They're energetically real, vibrationally active, and most importantly, they're still connected to you through the same quantum entanglement that links those particles across the universe. You are entangled with every version of yourself that has ever existed or could exist. The question isn't whether this is true, the physics is clear. The question is, which version are you most strongly entangled with right now? Because entanglement isn't just connection, it's correlation. When particles are entangled, measuring one immediately determines the state of the other. Similarly, the version of you that you're most strongly entangled with determines your current state. It influences your thoughts, your emotions, your decisions, and ultimately, your reality. Most people remain entangled with past versions of themselves. The wounded child, the disappointed teenager, the heartbroken adult. They wonder why they keep recreating the same patterns, the same relationships, the same limitations. It's not because they're cursed or unlucky. It's because they're still quantum mechanically correlated with a version of themselves that vibrates at that frequency. You've felt this, haven't you? Those moments when you're about to take a leap and suddenly you feel pulled back by an invisible force. That's not just fear. That's the gravitational pull of your quantum entanglement with a version of you that's still playing it safe. Or those times when you inexplicably know something is about to happen before it does, when you feel drawn to a certain place or person without knowing why. That's not coincidence. That's you picking up signals from other entangled versions of yourself, versions that have already lived through what you're about to experience. The field of possibility that surrounds you isn't empty space. It's populated with versions of you at every conceivable frequency. There's a version of you that took every risk you avoided. There's a version that healed every wound you still carry. There's a version that's living your dream life not as fantasy, but as mundane Tuesday afternoon reality. And through the mechanics of quantum entanglement, you have access to all of them. Not theoretically, actually, but here's where most people get it wrong. They think manifestation is about creating something new. It's not. It's about changing which version of yourself you're most strongly entangled with. It's about shifting your quantum correlation from the version of you that struggles to the version of you that thrives. And this isn't done through wishing or hoping or even believing. It's done through frequency matching. Every version of you vibrates at a specific frequency. The version of you that's confident vibrates differently than the version that doubts. The version that's abundant vibrates differently than the version that lives in scarcity. These aren't just emotional states. They're quantum signatures, energetic fingerprints that determine which reality you collapse into experience. And here's the crucial part, you can't fake a frequency. The quantum field doesn't respond to what you pretend to be. It responds to what you actually are at the quantum level. This is why affirmations often fail. This is why vision boards gather dust. This is why you can want something desperately and never receive it. Because wanting is a frequency of lack. Desperate desire is the quantum signature of the version of you that doesn't have. And as long as you're entangled with that version, you'll keep collapsing realities where you don't have, no matter how many positive thoughts you think or how many times you write your goals in a journal. The real work isn't in trying harder. It's in recognizing which version of yourself you're currently entangled with and consciously choosing to shift that entanglement. It's in understanding that you're not trying to become someone new. You're trying to strengthen your connection to a version of you that already exists. This version isn't in the future. It's in the quantum now, parallel to you, waiting for you to match its frequency. I know this might sound overwhelming, even impossible. How do you shift your entanglement? How do you change which version of yourself you're correlated with? How do you access these parallel versions that seem so far away? The answer is simpler than you think, but it requires something most people aren't willing to give: the complete surrender of who they think they are. Because as long as you're gripping tightly to your current identity, you're maintaining your entanglement with the version of you that created it. And that version, by definition, can only create more of what you already have. To access a different reality, you need to become entangled with a different version of yourself. And to do that, you need to let the current version go. Not improve it, not heal it, not fix it. Let it go. Now that you understand you're entangled with multiple versions of yourself, let's dive into something even more profound: how reality actually constructs itself around your identity. Because the universe isn't just responding to your thoughts or your emotions. It's responding to something far deeper, the fundamental frequency of who you believe yourself to be at the quantum level. And this isn't philosophy. This is the observable mechanics of how consciousness collapses possibility into experience. In quantum mechanics, there's a principle called the observer effect. It states that the act of observation collapses a wave function into a particle. Before observation, a quantum system exists in what's called superposition, all possibilities existing simultaneously. The moment consciousness observes it, it snaps into one definite state. This has been proven thousands of times in laboratories around the world. Matter literally behaves differently when consciousness is watching. But here's what they don't teach you in physics class. You're not just observing reality. You're observing it through a specific lens, your identity. And that identity isn't neutral. It's a filter, a frequency modulator that determines which possibilities you can even perceive, let alone collapse into your experience. Your identity is the observer, and the observer determines what manifests from the infinite field of possibility. Think about it this way. Reality is like an infinite ocean of potential, containing every possible version of your life, but your identity is the net you cast into that ocean. A small, fearful identity casts a small net and catches small fish. An expanded, confident identity casts a wider net and catches bigger possibilities. But most people spend their entire lives trying to catch bigger fish with the same small net, wondering why reality isn't responding to their desires. The quantum field doesn't care what you want. It cares about what you are. More specifically, it responds to the electromagnetic signature of your identity, the consistent broadcast of frequency that you emit every moment of every day. This broadcast isn't coming from your conscious mind. It's coming from your deepest beliefs about who you are, what you deserve, what's possible for someone like you. These beliefs create a resonance pattern, and that pattern acts like a magnet, attracting experiences that match its frequency. This is why two people can take the exact same action and get completely different results. They're not operating from the same identity frequency. One person starts a business from the identity of "I'm someone who succeeds," while another starts the same business from "I hope this works because I need the money." Same action, different observer, completely different quantum collapse. The field doesn't respond to the action. It responds to the consciousness taking the action. You've experienced this yourself. Those times when you tried to push through with willpower but everything felt like swimming upstream. That's because you were trying to force an outcome that didn't match your identity frequency, and those magical moments when everything flowed effortlessly, when synchronicities appeared everywhere, when the universe seemed to conspire in your favor. That's what happens when your actions align with your identity frequency. You weren't lucky. You were coherent. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Your identity isn't just attracting certain experiences, it's literally filtering reality itself. There are opportunities, people, and possibilities floating around you right now that you cannot see. Not because they're hiding, but because they exist at a frequency your current identity can't perceive. It's like trying to see ultraviolet light with human eyes. The light is there, but your apparatus isn't equipped to detect it. This is why personal development often fails to create lasting change. People try to change their circumstances without changing their identity. They try to think positive thoughts while maintaining the identity of someone who struggles. They visualize abundance while their core identity vibrates with scarcity, and then they wonder why the universe isn't responding. It is responding, perfectly, precisely, to their actual frequency, not their pretended one. The architecture of reality is elegantly simple. Consciousness observes, identity filters, frequency attracts, and experience manifests. This happens billions of times per second, creating the seemingly solid reality you experience. But that reality isn't fixed. It's a dynamic living response to your identity broadcast. Change the broadcaster, and you change the entire show. So how does identity actually interface with the quantum field? Through coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions all align with a single identity frequency, you create what physicists call coherence, a state where all waves are in phase, amplifying each other instead of cancelling out. This coherent signal is like a laser compared to a regular light bulb. It's focused, powerful, and able to penetrate through the noise of the quantum field. Most people live in incoherence. They want abundance but identify with lack. They desire love but identify as unworthy. They seek health but identify with illness. These mixed signals create static in the field, and static manifests as confusion, struggle, and inconsistent results. The universe isn't punishing them. It's just responding to an incoherent signal with an incoherent reality. But when you achieve identity coherence, when every part of you aligns with a single frequency, reality has no choice but to respond. This isn't manifestation, it's physics. A coherent signal always organizes the field around itself, always, without exception. The only variable is how long you can maintain that coherence before old identity patterns resurface. And that brings us to the most important point. Identity isn't something you have. It's something you choose, every moment. With every thought, every response, every decision, you're either reinforcing your current identity or creating space for a new one. Most people don't realize they have this choice. They think they are their personality, their history, their circumstances, but all of that is just the result of previous identity choices that became unconscious through repetition. You are the consciousness that chooses the identity, not the identity itself. This is the ultimate liberation and the ultimate responsibility. Because if you're choosing your identity, that means you can choose differently. Not tomorrow, not after you heal, not when circumstances change. Right now, in this moment, you can choose to observe reality through the eyes of the version of you that already has everything you desire. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. The old identity doesn't go quietly. It has momentum. It has neural pathways. It has relationships and circumstances built around it. When you start to shift your identity, reality will test you. Not because the universe is cruel, but because reality has inertia. It takes time for the field to reorganize around your new frequency. And in that gap between the old and the new, most people panic and collapse back into the familiar. This is why understanding the architecture of reality is so crucial. When you know how it works, you can navigate the transition period without losing faith. You understand that the chaos isn't a sign that it's not working. It's proof that it is. The old structure has to dissolve before the new one can crystallize. The caterpillar has to become soup before it becomes a butterfly. We've arrived at the moment where theory transforms into practice, where understanding becomes embodiment, where knowledge becomes power, Because knowing that you're entangled with multiple versions of yourself means nothing if you don't know how to consciously shift that entanglement. And that's exactly what I'm about to show you. Not another visualization technique or manifestation hack, but the actual quantum mechanics of identity transformation. But first, I need you to understand something that might disturb you. The version of you that got you here cannot take you where you want to go. Read that again. The identity that created your current reality is perfectly designed to maintain it, not transcend it. This isn't a flaw, it's a feature. Identity creates stability through repetition. But when stability becomes a prison, it's time for what I call the collapse method. The conscious dissolution of an outdated observer and the emergence of a new one. This isn't about self-improvement. Let me be absolutely clear about that. Self-improvement assumes the current self is worth improving. But what if the entire operating system is outdated? What if you're trying to run quantum reality through a mechanical identity? You don't upgrade a typewriter into a computer. You replace it entirely. And that's what we're about to do. Not improve your identity, but collapse it and choose a new one. The collapse method has 3 distinct phases, and each one requires something most people aren't prepared to give: radical honesty, ruthless compassion, and unwavering commitment. This isn't a gentle process. It's a controlled demolition of everything you thought you were, followed by a conscious reconstruction of who you choose to be. It's death and rebirth at the identity level, and it's the only way to truly jump timelines. Phase 1 is witnessing. Not judging, not analyzing, not fixing, just witnessing. You need to see the current observer clearly, without the stories, without the justifications, without the elaborate defense mechanisms you've built around it. Who is the version of you that's been making decisions? What does this identity believe about reality? About possibility? About what someone like you deserves? Sit with this question until you feel it in your body. Who am I being when no one is watching? Not who do you pretend to be? Not who do you wish you were? Who are you actually being in the privacy of your own consciousness? What identity is running the show when you're alone at 3 a.m., when you're triggered, when you're faced with opportunity? That's your true current frequency, and until you see it clearly, you can't change it. Most people skip this phase. They're so eager to become someone new that they never fully witness who they're being now. But you can't leave a room you don't know you're in. You can't collapse an identity you're not conscious of. So witness it. Feel its texture, its weight, its familiar gravity. Notice how it speaks to you. Notice what it focuses on. Notice what it believes is possible and impossible. You'll recognize this identity by its repetitive patterns. It's the one that always finds the same type of partner. It's the one that sabotages success at the same level every time. It's the one that gets triggered by the same situations, responds with the same emotions, creates the same outcomes. This isn't your personality, it's your programming. And like any program, it can be terminated. Phase 2 is severing. This is where most people fail, because severing isn't a mental exercise. It's an energetic amputation. You're cutting the quantum entanglement between your consciousness and an identity structure. And just like cutting any deep connection, it's going to hurt. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something real. The severing happens through a declaration, but not the kind of affirmation you're used to. This is a quantum declaration, spoken from the depths of your being to the field itself. I am no longer available for this identity. I release all contracts, all agreements, all entanglements with this version of myself. I lovingly but firmly close this timeline. This story ends now. Feel the finality of that. Not I'm trying to change, not I hope to improve. This ends now. You're not negotiating with the old identity. You're not asking for its permission. You're informing it that its services are no longer required. You're filing for quantum divorce from a version of yourself that you've outgrown. When you do this with genuine intent, you'll feel something shift. It might be subtle, a lightness, a spaciousness, like taking off a heavy coat you forgot you were wearing. Or it might be intense, emotions surfacing, memories arising, the old identity fighting for its survival. Let it all happen. Don't resist the dissolution. This is what quantum collapse feels like at the identity level. But here's what no one tells you. The old identity will try to reconstitute itself. Within hours, sometimes minutes, it will start whispering its familiar stories. This isn't real. You can't change. You'll always be this way. Remember what happened last time you tried? This is normal, expected. It's the momentum of old neural pathways trying to reassert themselves. Don't fight these thoughts. Just notice them as echoes from a timeline you're no longer participating in. Phase 3 is choosing. Not choosing what you want, choosing who you are. This is the critical distinction that separates the collapse method from every manifestation technique you've ever tried. You're not choosing outcomes. You're choosing identity. You're selecting which version of yourself becomes the new observer of your reality. Close your eyes and feel into this. Somewhere in the quantum field, there's a version of you that already embodies everything you're seeking. Not because they have it, but because they are it. They don't have confidence. They are confident. They don't have abundance. They are abundant. They don't have love. They are love. This version isn't superior to you. They're not more deserving. They simply made different identity choices that led to different quantum collapses. Now, here's the revolutionary part. You don't need to become that version. You just need to choose to observe reality through their eyes, right now, without preparation, without healing, without being ready. You simply choose. I am now observing reality as the version of me that already lives my ideal life. I see what they see. I feel what they feel. I choose what they choose. This isn't pretending. This isn't fake it till you make it. This is consciousness selecting a new point of observation in the quantum field. It's like changing the camera angle in a movie. The scene is the same, but everything looks different from the new perspective. And when you maintain this new point of observation consistently, reality has no choice but to reorganize itself to match what this observer expects to see. But choosing isn't a one-time event. It's a practice. Every morning you choose again. Every triggered moment you choose again. Every decision point you choose again. Which version of me is responding right now? The old one that I severed from, or the new one I chose to be? This constant choosing is what stabilizes the new identity until it becomes automatic, natural, inevitable. The collapse method isn't comfortable. It's not meant to be. You're literally dying to your old self and being reborn as a new one. But unlike physical death, you get to consciously participate in your own rebirth. You get to choose who emerges from the quantum foam. You get to select which possibility becomes your reality. You've done it. You've witnessed the old identity, severed the entanglement, and chosen a new observer. You've felt the shift, that unmistakable lightness when a timeline releases its grip. For a moment, maybe even for days, you felt different. You saw through new eyes. You responded from a new frequency. The quantum jump happened. But then, something unexpected occurred. Reality pushed back. This is the chapter no one writes about in manifestation books. This is the conversation spiritual teachers avoid because it's messy, uncomfortable, and doesn't sell courses. But this is exactly where most people abandon their quantum jump, not because they failed, but because they didn't understand what was actually happening. They didn't realize that the space between identities isn't empty. It's full of static, resistance, and the dying screams of the old observer trying to resurrect itself. Welcome to the recalibration zone. The quantum purgatory between who you were and who you're becoming. This isn't a setback. It's not proof that the jump didn't work. It's the most natural and necessary part of the process, as essential as the space between breaths, as vital as the pause between heartbeats. This is where the real alchemy happens, where the new identity either solidifies into diamond or dissolves back into sand. Let me explain what's actually occurring at the quantum level when you shift identities. You're not just changing your mind, you're changing the fundamental frequency at which your consciousness operates. And like any frequency shift, there's a period of interference. Imagine two radio stations bleeding into each other. For a while, you hear both songs simultaneously, creating discord, confusion, static. That's exactly what's happening in your reality right now. The old timeline and the new timeline are overlapping, creating turbulence in your experience. You'll notice this turbulence in specific ways. People who knew the old you will unconsciously test the boundaries of your new identity. They're not doing it maliciously. They're responding to the energetic dissonance between who you were and who you're becoming. They'll bring up old stories, trigger familiar patterns, invite you back into dynamics that no longer fit. This isn't the universe testing you. It's the quantum field recalibrating to your new frequency. And part of that recalibration involves everything that was attuned to your old frequency becoming unstable. Circumstances will feel surreal, like you're living in two movies simultaneously. One moment, you'll feel completely aligned with your new identity, making decisions from abundance, responding from confidence, creating from joy. The next moment, you'll find yourself drowning in familiar anxiety, as if the jump never happened. You'll question everything. Did I imagine it? Was it real? Am I fooling myself? This oscillation isn't failure, it's integration. You're learning to hold a new frequency while the old one dies, and that creates temporary instability in your field. Your body will rebel. This is the part that surprises everyone. When you change identities at the quantum level, your nervous system has to recalibrate. The old you had a specific biochemical signature, certain stress hormones, neurotransmitter patterns, muscular tensions. The new identity operates at a different biochemical frequency. Your body has to literally change its chemical composition to match your new frequency, and that process isn't always comfortable. You might feel exhausted as old energy patterns release. You might feel wired as new circuits come online. You might cry for no reason, laugh at nothing, feel everything and nothing all at once. This is not spiritual bypassing or new age delusion. This is documented in neuroscience as neuroplasticity, in physics as phase transition, in psychology as identity reconstruction. You're not just changing your mind, you're changing the physical structure of your brain, the chemical composition of your body, the electromagnetic field you generate. That takes energy. That takes time. That takes fierce commitment to the new frequency, even when every cell in your body is screaming to return to the familiar. But here's what separates those who complete the jump from those who don't. Understanding that comfort is not the goal, coherence is. The old identity was comfortable because it was familiar, not because it was good for you. The new identity feels uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar, not because it's wrong for you. Most people interpret discomfort as a stop sign when it's actually a growth signal. They retreat to the known at the exact moment when the unknown is about to become their new normal. During recalibration, you need to become militantly protective of your new frequency. This isn't about positive thinking or forced optimism. It's about conscious frequency management. Every thought you think either reinforces the new identity or resurrects the old one. Every conversation you have either strengthens your new timeline or pulls you back into the expired one. Every decision you make either anchors the new observer or reactivates the old one. This is why isolation often becomes necessary during recalibration. Not permanent isolation, but strategic withdrawal from frequencies that are incompatible with who you're becoming. You might need to limit contact with certain people, avoid certain places, abstain from certain conversations. This isn't judgment or superiority, it's quantum hygiene. You wouldn't expose a newborn baby to harsh elements. Don't expose your newborn identity to incompatible frequencies until it's stabilized. The recalibration period typically follows a predictable pattern. First comes the honeymoon phase, where the new identity feels magical, effortless, inevitable. Then comes the backlash, where the old identity fights back with everything it has. Then comes the void, the most challenging phase where you feel neither the old nor the new, suspended in quantum limbo. This is where most people quit. They can't handle the emptiness, the uncertainty, the feeling of being nobody and everybody simultaneously. But if you can stay present in the void without filling it with old patterns, something miraculous happens. The new identity stops feeling like something you're doing and starts feeling like something you are. The effort dissolves into ease. The practice becomes natural. The mask becomes your face, not because you've been pretending long enough, but because you've maintained the new frequency long enough for reality to accept it as true. This is the secret of lasting transformation. It's not about how powerfully you jump, but how consistently you hold the new frequency during recalibration. Anyone can feel enlightened during meditation. Can you maintain that frequency in traffic? Anyone can feel abundant after a motivational video. Can you maintain that frequency when checking your bank account? Anyone can feel loved during a romantic moment. Can you maintain that frequency when you're alone? The recalibration zone is where quantum jumpers become quantum residents. It's where tourists become citizens of new timelines. It's where the extraordinary becomes ordinary, where miracles become mundane, where the impossible becomes inevitable. But only for those who understand that the chaos isn't the problem, it's the process. The noise isn't interference, it's integration. The discomfort isn't failure, it's freedom being born. Something profound happens when you've held your new frequency long enough. The static clears, the resistance fades. The constant effort to maintain your new identity suddenly stops. Not because you've given up, but because you've arrived. You're no longer trying to be the new version of yourself, you simply are. This is integration, the final phase of quantum jumping, where the miraculous becomes mundane and the impossible becomes your everyday normal. But integration isn't what most people expect. They imagine fireworks, dramatic revelations, instantaneous wealth, or perfect relationships appearing out of thin air. And while external changes do occur, sometimes dramatically, the real integration happens so quietly you might miss it if you're not paying attention. It's the absence of struggle rather than the presence of success. It's the silence where the old voice used to scream. It's the peace of no longer fighting yourself for the right to be who you've become. You'll know you've integrated when you can no longer remember what it felt like to be the old you. Oh, you'll remember the facts, the events, the storyline, but the emotional charge will be gone. It will feel like remembering a movie you watched rather than a life you lived. The old triggers won't trigger. The old patterns won't activate. The old fears won't grip. Not because you've healed them or processed them or worked through them, but because they belong to an identity that no longer exists. This is the paradox of true integration. It feels like nothing happened. You don't feel like you've changed because the new identity has become so natural that it feels like it was always you. The struggle was in the becoming, the peace is in the being. And from this new state of being, you look back at your old life with compassion, but not connection, understanding, but not identification. You can see why the old you made those choices, felt those fears, created those limitations, but you can no longer access that frequency. It's like trying to tune into a radio station that no longer broadcasts. The external world begins to reflect your internal integration in ways that feel less like manifestation and more like natural consequence. Opportunities don't appear. They were always there, but now you can see them. Relationships don't suddenly improve. You're now showing up as someone who naturally creates healthy dynamics. Money doesn't magically manifest. You're making different decisions from a different identity that naturally leads to different financial outcomes. The magic isn't in what appears, but in what disappears. The resistance, the self-sabotage, the unconscious patterns that kept you looping in the same reality. You'll notice your language changes without trying. The old you used to say, I hope, I wish, I'm trying. The integrated you says, I am, I choose, I create. Not as affirmations, but as simple statements of fact. The old you asked, why me? The integrated you asks, what's next? The old you waited for permission. The integrated you grants it to themselves. These aren't conscious corrections. They're natural expressions of a fundamentally different operating system. Your body completes its recalibration during integration. The chronic tension you didn't even know you were carrying releases. Your breathing deepens naturally. Your sleep improves not because you're doing anything different, but because your nervous system is no longer in constant threat detection mode. You might notice you look different in photos, not younger necessarily, but more present, more alive, more you. The mask you didn't know you were wearing has dissolved, and your true face is finally visible. Relationships become the clearest mirror of integration. Some people will celebrate your transformation, drawn to your new frequency like moths to flame. Others will feel threatened by it, not because you're threatening them, but because your transformation highlights their stagnation. You'll find yourself naturally gravitating toward people who match your new frequency and gently releasing those who don't. Not from judgment, but from energetic incompatibility. Oil and water don't mix, not because one is better than the other, but because they operate at different densities. The most surprising aspect of integration is how ordinary it feels. The version of you that struggled to make ends meet finds it completely normal to have abundance. The version of you that felt unworthy of love finds it completely natural to be adored. The version of you that played small finds it obvious to take up space. What once felt impossible now feels inevitable. What once required effort now requires restraint to not do. This is the ultimate sign of integration. When your extraordinary new normal becomes so normal you forget it was ever extraordinary. But here's what nobody tells you about integration. It's not an ending. It's a platform. Once you've successfully jumped timelines once, you realize you can do it again, and again, and again. You're not locked into the new identity any more than you were locked into the old one. You're free to continue evolving, expanding, exploring new versions of yourself. The only difference is now you know how. You've demystified the process. You've proven to yourself that identity is a choice, reality is responsive, and transformation is always possible. You also realize something profound. You were never broken. The old version of you wasn't wrong or bad or lacking. They were perfectly designed for the reality they were creating. They served their purpose, taught their lessons, provided their experiences. From your new vantage point, you can see the perfection of the entire journey. Every struggle was preparation. Every failure was redirection. Every loss was making space for what was coming. The old you wasn't your enemy. They were your chrysalis. Integration brings a responsibility you might not expect. When you've successfully jumped timelines, you become living proof that it's possible. Your very existence becomes a permission slip for others to transform. Not through preaching or teaching, but through being. Your integrated presence creates a field effect, a ripple in the quantum pond that touches everyone you encounter. Some will be inspired, some will be triggered. All will be affected by the coherence of someone who has chosen their identity rather than inherited it. You'll find yourself less interested in convincing others and more interested in continuing your own evolution. The need to be understood by people operating from old frequencies disappears. You're not here to drag anyone into your timeline. You're here to fully inhabit it yourself and let that inhabitation be invitation enough for those who are ready. Your transformation isn't a judgment on those who haven't transformed. It's simply a choice you made that they're equally free to make when they're ready. This is the final secret of integration. It never actually ends. Each integrated identity becomes the launching pad for the next jump. Each new normal becomes the platform for the next expansion. You're not climbing a ladder with a final rung. You're surfing an infinite wave of becoming, and each successful ride teaches you how to catch bigger waves, navigate stronger currents, dance with deeper mysteries. The you who started watching this video might not even recognize the you who's about to finish it. Something has shifted, hasn't it? A remembering has occurred. A possibility has opened. A timeline has become visible that was hidden before. That's the beginning of your next jump, seeded in the completion of this transmission. Here we are, at the end that is actually a beginning, at the conclusion that is truly an initiation. You've just received the complete transmission, not of information you needed to learn, but of a remembering you needed to activate. Because everything I've shared with you wasn't new knowledge. It was ancient wisdom encoded in your quantum DNA, waiting for the right frequency to unlock it. And if you're still here, still listening, still feeling the resonance of these words in your bones, then the unlocking has already begun. Let me tell you what actually happened while you were watching this. Layer by layer, word by word, frequency by frequency, we've been loosening the grip of an outdated identity. We've been creating quantum interference patterns that disrupted your old programming. We've been planting seeds of possibility in the fertile void between who you were when you started watching and who you're becoming as these final words land in your consciousness. You haven't just been watching a video. You've been participating in your own transformation. You came here carrying a question even if you couldn't articulate it. Is there more? Is there another way? Is the life I'm living the only one available to me? And through the language of quantum mechanics, through the poetry of parallel realities, through the science of consciousness itself, you've received your answer. There are infinite versions of you, living every possible permutation of your life, and you have access to all of them. Not in theory, not in imagination, in actual, navigable, livable reality. But knowledge without application is merely entertainment. Understanding without embodiment is just philosophy. And so now you stand at the quantum crossroads, the choice point that every conscious being eventually faces. Will you actually jump? Will you release the familiar prison of who you've been? Will you dare to collapse a new reality by becoming a new observer? Or will you file this away as an interesting concept, a fascinating theory, something to think about but never actually do? I want to be radically honest with you in these final moments. The path I've outlined isn't easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. Simple because the mechanics are clear. Witness the old identity, sever the entanglement, choose the new observer, navigate the recalibration, integrate the transformation. But not easy because it requires you to die to everything you've known yourself to be. It requires you to release the strange comfort of familiar suffering. It requires you to take responsibility for every aspect of your reality without exception. Most people won't do it. Most people will watch videos like this, read books about quantum jumping, attend workshops on manifestation. But when the moment comes to actually release their old identity, they'll find 1,000 reasons why it's not the right time. They'll wait for more healing, more preparation, more perfect conditions. They'll treat transformation like a luxury item they can't quite afford yet, not realizing that waiting is a choice that reinforces the identity of someone who waits. But you're not most people. I know this because the algorithm didn't randomly suggest this video. You called it in through your readiness, through your exhaustion with the old timeline, through your soul's recognition that it's time. The version of you that's already living your ideal life has been sending signals backward through time, creating synchronicities, generating dissatisfaction with the status quo, making you hungry for something you couldn't quite name. This video is one of those signals. Your watching it is proof that the entanglement is already active. So here's my invitation, my challenge, my quantum dare. Don't wait. Don't prepare. Don't process what you've learned before you apply it. Right now, in this moment, as these words penetrate your consciousness, make the choice. Declare to the quantum field, to every version of yourself across every timeline, to the infinite intelligence that permeates all reality. I choose to jump. I choose to release who I've been. I choose to embody who I am becoming. I choose to observe reality through the eyes of my highest timeline. Not tomorrow, not when I'm ready, now. Feel what happens when you make that declaration with genuine intent. Feel the shift in your cells, the opening in your chest, the electricity in your spine. That's not imagination. That's your quantum signature changing in real time. That's the old observer beginning to dissolve and the new one beginning to emerge. That's the timeline starting to shift beneath your feet like tectonic plates adjusting to a new configuration. The days ahead will be intense. You've initiated something that can't be undone. The old identity will fight for its survival with everything it has. It will flood you with doubt, seduce you with familiar patterns, terrorize you with worst-case scenarios. This is normal, expected. It's the death throes of an obsolete operating system. Don't negotiate with it. Don't comfort it. Don't believe its stories about why you can't change. Simply observe it dissolving and choose again from your new identity. You'll be tempted to look for evidence that the jump is working. You'll check your bank account to see if abundance has arrived. You'll analyze your relationships to see if they've transformed. You'll measure your external reality against your internal shift and potentially find it lacking. This is the trap. The external is always the last to change because matter is dense, slow to respond to frequency shifts. Trust the internal transformation. Trust the feeling of being different. Trust the subtle but undeniable knowing that something fundamental has shifted. Remember this. You're not jumping to get something. You're jumping to become something. The getting is a byproduct of the becoming. The having is a consequence of the being. When you truly embody the identity of someone who has what you desire, the having becomes inevitable. Not because the universe rewards good behavior, but because reality has no choice but to match your sustained frequency. It's law. It's physics. It's the fundamental architecture of existence. Years from now, you'll look back at this moment as the turning point. The moment when you stopped being a victim of circumstance and became a conscious creator of reality. The moment when you stopped waiting for life to happen and started choosing which life to live. The moment when you realized that every limitation was a choice, every pattern was changeable, every identity was temporary. This moment, right now, as these final words register in your consciousness. The version of you that has everything you desire isn't in the future. They're in the quantum now, parallel to this moment, reaching through the veil, extending their hand, inviting you to step into their timeline. They're not superior to you. They're not more deserving. They simply made different choices that led to different collapses of reality, and now they're offering you the roadmap, the permission, the activation code to join them. But here's the ultimate truth, the final revelation, the last piece of the puzzle. That version isn't separate from you. It is you. You're not jumping to become someone else. You're jumping to become who you've always been, beneath the layers of conditioning, trauma, and borrowed limitations. You're not transforming into something foreign. You're returning to something essential. You're not leaving home. You're finally coming home. The quantum field is waiting for your signal. Not your wish, not your hope, not your visualization. Your signal, the coherent, sustained broadcast of who you choose to be. Send that signal with every thought, every feeling, every action, every breath. Send it when you wake up tomorrow.
Send it when life tests you.
Send it when the old identity whispers its familiar lullabies. Send it until reality has no choice but to reorganize itself around your new frequency. This is not goodbye. This is initiation. This is activation. This is the beginning of your conscious participation in the quantum game of reality creation. You now know the rules. You now have the tools. You now understand the mechanics. The only question remaining is the one only you can answer. Which version of yourself will you choose to be when this video ends and your real life begins? The old you would close this video and return to scrolling, to distraction, to the comfortable numbness of unconscious existence. But the old you didn't make it this far. The one who's here now, who's absorbed this entire transmission, who's feeling the electricity of possibility coursing through their veins, that's the new you already emerging. Honor that emergence. Trust that becoming. Choose that timeline. Welcome to the quantum field of infinite possibility. Welcome to the recognition that you are both the observer and the observed, the creator and the creation, the question and the answer. Welcome to the remembering of your true nature as a being who can choose their reality by choosing their identity. Welcome to the other side of the jump you've already begun. The transformation isn't coming. It's here. You aren't becoming. You are, and so it begins.